Welcome to Pulp Mortem, search for lost literary classic from the Pulp era. You want to dip your toes? You're watching the wrong video, skipper. We diving in. We all getting wet. Welcome to the deep end, mother... I hope that came off as cool as it sounded. Anyway, talk to us, Jack. Jack Vance, or John Holbrook Vance, is an American mystery, science fiction, and fantasy writer born August 20th, 1916, and he died in 2003 at the age of 96. No obscurity here, Vance was well known and respected. Still, Michael Chabon said, Jack Vance is the most painful case of all the writers I love who feel don't get the credit they deserve. I would list the jobs, careers, and skills Vance had, but then we'd be here for hours. This man did everything. He said of himself, I developed from an impractical little intellectual into a rather reckless young man, competent at many skills and crafts and determined to try every phase of life. And he did just that. Perhaps most interesting was his moving to Mexico with buddies Frank Herbert and Paul Anderson to build a houseboat together. I want to read that book, which checks out since his autobiography won a Hugo. Also, it was rare to find him without either a kazoo or harmonica on his person.
He's up here riffing our hearts out, boys.
Vance's first published short story appeared in Thrilling Wonder Stories in 1945. Since Vance used a plethora of pseudonyms during his lifetime, I'm having a hard time landing on an accurate number for the books and short stories he's written. Let's just say it's a lot. Vance was named Grandmaster of Science Fiction and Fantasy in 1992 and won the World Fantasy Award for Lifetime Achievement in '84. He's also won a Nebula, Edgar, Jupiter Award, and the Hugo Award 3 times. He was inducted into the Science Fiction Hall of Fame in 2001. I gotta say, not too shabby a life for a man who was legally blind. Which brings us to the Blue World. The Blue World, a beautiful world, a world of water, with floating islands made by the thick, spreading tops of gigantic ocean growths, big enough to support neat houses and sea gardens alive with fish of all kinds, rich with edible water plants and even communication towers so that the people of the floats were not cut off from one another but could send messages and enjoy festivals and meetings together. Except for one thing. The massive abundance of the ocean spawned far more than food and sustenance for the puny humans living on its surface. The floats were in constant danger from the ravaging attacks of great sea creatures, against which there was no defense, except mealy mouth propitiation. The Blue World needed a rebel, one who would give his life if necessary. They found one. The Blue World was based on an earlier novella named The Kraken that was first published in Fantastic Stories of Imagination in 1964. 2 years later, this Ballantine book that I own was printed. It is 190 pages and originally cost 50 cents. I can't find any information on the cover artist, which is always a bummer. I really like the cover. It's unique, it stands out. I love that this fellow here has a trident. Honestly, many of these covers are great, though none of them are accurate to the story, I would say, except for this 87 edition by Steve Crisp. You shouldn't have any trouble finding any edition you want for around $5. With that out of the way, let's talk about what I liked. It is a world completely without land, water as far as the eye could see, and it's not like we first arrive at this planet. By the time we enter the story, we are 12 generations in of some mysterious crash landing. Most of history has been lost, and what little information we do have is expertly doled out by Vance. We know next to nothing about this interesting world that we're in, and Vance treats his audience like they're smart, with just this slow drip of information, just enough information, and it comes so seamlessly into the story. There's no clunky exposition dumps, no overhead. This is, narrator voice. It was handled really well. The people on the floats are arranged into these kind of caste systems with names like hoodwinks, bezzlers, larceners, smugglers, things like that, giving us the impression, and never said outright, but just these hints and these clues that perhaps these people have descended from some sort of crashed penal vessel or maybe a prison transport ship that went off course and crash landed on this planet. It's all very clever, and this world that Vance created is by far the best part of this book. The conflict is very engaging. The apex predator of this world is a huge, monstrous sea monster called the Kraken, who is also semi-intelligent. These Kraken beasts consume the plants that the humans are living on. But generations ago, humans somehow struck a deal with a certain Kraken. He would fend off marauding Krakens in return for being regularly fed. As a result, this Kraken, now named King Kraken, has grown to a terrifyingly gargantuan size and the symbiotic relationship between King Kragan and the humans has developed into sort of a religion, with this huge sea beast as taking the godlike role. Skylar Hast, an apprentice hoodwink, has had enough, and he spearheads a rebellion with the aim to kill King Kragan. Unfortunately, not all the humans agree with his plan, and soon Skylar has more to worry about than the most dangerous monster in the sea. The practical aspects of living on a lily pad. I love many of the problems this creates and many of Vance's solutions. For instance, how do you kill a giant sea monster without anything hard? Think about it. They're floating on a giant sea sponge and there's no way to reach the seabed, so they have no wood, no stone, no metal. The most valuable resource in the world is human bones, because they're hard and dense and they can be fashioned into knives and hooks and needles and things like that. And now, the bad. The last good point is also the first bad point, because the science here is wrong. For instance, the rebellion does figure out a way to get metal from human blood.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. No, it doesn't!
Now, obviously, it's possible to extract iron from blood, but it's a very, very complicated process that I have researched, however, not for creepy reasons, for book reasons. I'm not trying to make a sword of my enemies. But it'd be very, very difficult to replicate in modern day, let alone on a lily pad. But they figure it out, and the way they do it is they use some ash, heat, and Sea Ooze. Sea Ooze. And voila! Metal. So now they've got this blood metal, they're able to smelt it down using a crucible. Shoot. Where'd they get the crucible? Anyway, forget about the crucible. Let's just assume that they had a crucible, okay? We'll give them that. So they put the metal into the furnace. Shoot. Dang it. Where'd they get the furnace? Stop being so critical. Okay, let's just assume they had the crucible, they had the furnace, so then they smelt it down, they poured in the mold. How'd they get the mold? Okay, forget the mold. Anyway, they poured it into the mold, and then they have an ingot, so they're able to hammer it, and forge it into some knives and blades and stuff. Ah, shoot, where'd they get an anvil or a hammer? Or they also use electrodes, napalm bombs, things you can make on a lily pad. Quiz time. What's better than a meeting? You're right, a dozen meetings. And I'm not sure that I'm exaggerating with that number. We are 2 chapters in. I'm happily reading along, and then all of a sudden, we're in a council meeting, which is fine. Then we're in another council meeting. Then we're in a secret council meeting. Now we're in some criminal proceedings, so there's a hearing. And then there's another hearing. Oh, mistrial! So we start over, and now there's another hearing. Getting bored just talking about it. For my American friends, have you ever been to jury duty? This is Jury Duty, the book. Half of this book is nothing. I was literally bored to tears. I haven't been this disappointed since
Insert sports team.
Lost the
Insert sports championship.
Am I right?
Insert sport.
Fans. I'm trying to get that crossover audience, but I can't seem to lock in on it. But I think I got it here. If I've raised your hopes and piqued your interest from the good section, I apologize. This book is crazy boring. Honestly, what didn't help is the dialogue. Imagine, if you can, that you're descended from criminals, marooned on this inhospitable alien world where you live out your primitive life on these lily pads in the shadow of a huge monster that eats the very thing you stand on. How would you talk? If you guessed exactly like Lieutenant Commander Data, then you'd be 100% correct.
Spot, you are disrupting my ability to work. This will need a completely new field induction subprocessor. It appears we will be required to ignite the midnight petroleum, sir.
Emotionless, aloof, without inflection, this was such a weird decision by Vance that it literally boggles my mind.
How is your diplomatic assignment progressing?
Fine.
I have heard that in moments of diplomatic tension, it is often helpful to find elements of commonality.
There isn't a single exclamation point in this book. As bored as I was reading it, it seemed as though every single character in the story was somehow more bored.
Captain, I wish to submit myself for disciplinary action.
They are so stiff, so rigid, so proper. Let me read to you a climactic meeting sequence, of course, where someone finally lost their cool. I see that our attempt at a harmonious solution is in vain due to your nefarious designs. Any attempt upon King Kragen's dignity shall be regarded as a capital offense. There will be no further unorthodoxy. Beware that your impudence does not bring you to grief.
You're boring!
Not gonna lie, I was rooting for the sea monster. Perhaps I spoke a little too soon. There is a budding love interest.
そうなんですね。おっと今中尾がキスの挑発をしていきなりヒーリングが殴ってしまいました。
Despite Skylar kind of being responsible for her father's death in a way, Meryl Rohan decides to side with Skylar during the revolution. Skylar eventually asks Meryl to espouse him, his words obviously. I have designs to espouse you.
What?
And she gives him a non-committal answer, but I'm thinking to myself, finally something's happening. Finally some characterization, finally some actual emotion, and then the book just forgets about her. And it isn't as though she is not integral to the plot. She's in the main inner workings of everything until she suddenly wasn't. She's not mentioned again. I think Jack Vance just forgot about poor Meryl. So what's the verdict? Ebook, 3 out of 5 and just barely. You may have noticed that we didn't have the fun section. That's because this book is so bloody dull and I couldn't think of anything fun. Imagine Waterworld without all the charm and fun, which really is the only reason to watch that. Also, replace all the actors with 2x4s and you'd get the blue world. But it was so serious, and not just, I'm okay with a serious novel and a serious story, but it was serious to a pretentious level.
The sea was angry that day, my friends. Like an old man trying to send back soup in a deli.
The concept, the world, the setting, it was all so incredible that I wanted to love it. I really did want to love this, but I didn't even like it. I want to be able to recommend it, and I just can't. Still though, the world that Vance created is so original and so cool that it does elevate it from a thrift shop, but how can one aspect be so strong but the rest of the book be so weak? You know what I'm saying? It's just, I understand why this was nominated for a Nebula, and which it was nominated for a Nebula, which makes sense just based on the concept, but it didn't win, and that also makes sense. And that's my review of The Blue World. Have you guys read this? Do you agree with my take? Do you disagree? Or maybe is there another Jack Vance that I should have read instead? Please let us know in the comments. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time with Dinosaur Beach.
I am sorry if I have ended our friendship.